Let's take a look at the docket. A couple of big cases at the courts this week. Opening with prayer at City Council meeting. Just fine, according to the U.S. Supreme Court. And in Virginia, there's a proposal to limit the size of gatherings in private homes. Really? Why? Joining us on 710 KURV, Fox News legal analyst Lee Sweal. First up, the High Court saying, yes, you can open up City Council with prayer, even if it's a Christian prayer, says in the name of Jesus, and very specific in that. Can you tell me a little bit of the rationale and some of the opinions the court expressed?
Sure. It was a 5-4 decision. Justice Kennedy, who's usually the swing vote, wrote the majority for it. And what they decided on was that, look, it's a historical basis to the prayer in these group meetings. And they kind of went back to things like God save the United States in this honorable court, which is what they say at the opening of their own sessions. And they said, that's not religious. That's a historical background. That is part of our nation, our foundation as a
part of our culture.
Exactly, our
yeah.
culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so they looked at it like that, not as a purely religious function. And when you look down at the cases, like, for example, saying under God, when you say, the kids cite the Pledge of Allegiance, if it's, again, historical, and this is how they've ruled, then and kids aren't forced to do it. Like, they're not forced to go along with these prayers at the monthly meetings. They're just allowed to have the prayers. If you want to opt out and don't do it, don't do it,
Okay.
But then it's not religious. It's more historical. It's more cultural.
And not being forced to do it was, if I recall hearing some of the opinions, that was a main part of the argument. That
Absolutely.
no one's forcing you to do this. It's just part of the procedure, part of
Right.
protocol and observance and respect.
Yeah. Right. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. And it goes back to the Pledge of Allegiance cases where, hey, kids, if you don't want to do it, if you're a non-believer, then you just don't do it. You opt out.
Fox News legal analyst Lee Sweal joining us on 710 KURV.
But Lee, Tim Sullivan here.
Yeah.
How can this be constitutional when these prayers reference a specific religion, Christianity, when the First Amendment expressly says you cannot emphasize specific religions in the public realm?
Right, the Establishment Clause. I mean, that's why it's a 5-4 decision. And if you're a little bit cynical about it, and we always have to look at it this way, that it's a lot of politics are involved. You have the more conservative justices, the 5 of them ruling this way, the other more liberal justices ruling the other way. But it's couched in this. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying the rationale is that it's less religious than it is historical.
Because it's voluntary.
And it is in a heavily Christian area. So if a town, let me ask you this. Okay. If a town council then in another part of the country, let's say, eventually becomes heavily Muslim,
Michigan,
should there be there should then be no complaining if their prayers reference
Allah,
Muhammad?
Well, okay. That's an interesting thing that could happen, probably will happen. And you talk about Sharia law, for example. Should that be, it be
don't go that far.
Right, but no, you talk about it's actually been in the courts already. Should American judges recognize Sharia law in sentencing or anything else? And consistently they've said no. And the reason, again, you go back to culture and history. We are not, our history is not of a Muslim society. So the argument
we're not Christian society or Jewish society. Our country was founded on the freedom of religion, the tolerance of all religions.
That's
but
true.
Rooted in Christianity.
No, it was rooted in the tolerance of all religions.
It was not in the Muslim religion. It roots in Christianity.
The tolerance of religion. That's where we were rooted in.
It's in Christianity, dude.
Tolerance.
This is where we go back to let's take, for example, Christmas. And I know that we bring this up every year, but Christmas. What the courts have ruled is, with schools, if they are tolerant of all religions, for example, allowing every religion to put up whatever they want to put up for their holiday, then it's allowed. But if it's only one, then it's problematic. But when you come back to the prayers, it's a very tight line because their only two rationales are it's historical and cultural, and you have a way to opt out.
Okay, we could beat this one all day long. And,
I can see we could.
Yeah, Tim and I will be at each other's throat all day long. What's happening in Virginia? What is this about limiting the size of gatherings and private homes? What's going on?
I know this is kind of crazy. They've proposed an ordinance that said, look, now we're talking about the First Amendment and the right to assembly. The right to assemble. They're saying if you have more than 49 people in your home more than 3 times in 40 days, it's very, very. I mean, it's like arbitrary, like 49, but that 50th is going to kill you.
Whatever. Okay.
Then it's a violation. So you've got the First Amendment right to assemble against the zoning ordinances, which obviously cities have a right to zoning ordinances. We don't want craziness going on in our neighborhoods. But it gets to a ridiculous point where, wait a second, so if I have an open house, I'm trying to sell my house, and I have 50 people come see my home, I'm in trouble, which is under the law I would be.
And that's a city ordinance, though, right?
A zoning ordinance, right?
So
you've got a proposed zoning ordinance up against the First Amendment right to free assembly.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So this is being challenged on constitutional grounds?
Yeah, well, it hasn't been challenged yet. It will be. But I want to bring up another case that happened in Phoenix where a minister, Pastor Michael Salmon, was actually sentenced to 60 days in jail for conducting Bible study classes with 10 people. Yeah.
Wait, that's new to me. That is.
And what they said was, again, a zoning ordinance. It wasn't a First Amendment thing. They said, whatever your First Amendment, but it's a zoning ordinance.
Okay, did he challenge that one?
He did, but he's in jail. He went 60 days in jail.
Okay, is he continuing to challenge this?
I don't know where the appeal is.
Wow.
Yeah, this happened fairly recently. Let me just look at it down here too. The reports say they classified his property as a church, but then the zoning ordinance came in and said, well, you had more than 10 people at your home, and you didn't pay the proper taxes, and you're in violation of the zoning ordinance. So there's a lot built in there.
Okay, let's look at decisions from the past precedent, all that type of stuff. Who wins? Freedom of assembly or the city ordinance?
I would think freedom of assembly trumps the city ordinance, but they're never going to come down and say it's not about your freedom of assembly. You can assemble all you want, but you've got to do it under the ordinances, because why? It's a public safety issue. Then you get into public safety, and then public safety, trumps. I mean, it's just like this is why lawyers
I'm getting
get headaches.
Yeah, because you could make an argument on freedom of religion and all the other stuff.
A fascinating case.
Yeah. Thank you much, Lise. Have a wonderful day. Lise Wheel, Fox News legal analyst, joining us on 710 KURV.